This is no more, folks. The Nagin dance is over in Dubai. What a thrilling encounter. This do or die encounter at the Ring of Fire has really lived up to the hype.
This is actually the best match of the Asia Cup till this point.
Best match of maybe India-Pakistan, that thrilling aspect was there
Yeah,
in the
but
league
if
stage.
you're looking at the cricket on play there, that wasn't really much of a match. Right?
Absolutely shambolic, and in the end, yes, Sri Lanka have sealed their passage into the Super Fours. Bangladesh are out. Yet again, their winless streak in the UAE continues. They have played a total of 8 games in the UAE, 7 games, lost all 7. This is as nightmarish as it can get, folks, because remember, it was not a great start for Sri Lanka. But look at the number of no balls, look at the number of extras that Sri Lanka got.
From the Bangladesh.
I think Bangladeshis really wanted to give them a lot of no balls.
In fact, as Big Boy points out, what an anticlimax, and how can a spinner bowl a no ball? Exactly. What are you looking for by overstepping?
Yep.
2 kilometers per hour of extra pace?
Exactly.
I don't understand it.
Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
Towards the end, they could not maintain their discipline. Ultimate clash of the minions. See, I told you Bangladesh
Minions?
bowling may not be good. Pradeep Srivalsan.
Very, very naughty. Very naughty, Pradeep.
Rohit
But
Roy-
yes, I did point out that, Bangladesh, the bowling might be a problem because obviously, as it turns out, the 2 world-class bowlers couldn't save Bangladesh.
Yes, Mustafizur and Shakib could not save them, and Bangladesh also had a problem that they bowled Mustafizur out earlier than anticipated.
Yeah, why would you not, exactly, as King D points out, that Shakib miscalculated, and why would you not keep at least 1 or 2 overs of fizz for the death?
Mustafizur is a very good death overs bowler. Why did Shakib miscalculate and give Ibadat, who conceded more than 50 runs?
Yeah, and Ibadat, generally speaking, does tend to concede later on. He's better off in the early to mid-innings part of the phase of the match. In the
That's-
death, he's never really been, a big boy. You're mentioning field placement, but, honestly, see, fielding, I agree, was not great, but field placement after a point, I don't think they could do much because whatever gaps that were there, the Sri Lankans were exploiting very well.
Remember, Kusal Mendes finally stepped up and played a great knock, but the credit for this win has to go to Dasun Shanakar's blitz. Remember, he played a very similar role, 51 hit of 19 balls against Australia. That ensured that their losing streak ended in a particular style. So, overexcited Bangladesh bowling, spinners bowling no balls. I mean, heading into the final over also of this chase, Bangladesh were handicapped. Why? Because time was up and they had to get the fielders inside the ring. So they were already with just 7 runs needed yet again.
They needed what? I think 8 runs.
8
right?
runs.
8 runs. And look at how badly handicapped they were thanks to their own miscalculations. 8 runs needed, off spinner bowling, and 1 less fielder in the outside the ring. I mean, it's just a disaster. And then on top of that, you'll bowl a no ball to finish the match. Well done.
17 extras. 17 extras, and that is where I think Bangladesh lost the plot. Because remember, you started off pretty well. Patum Nisanka and all the others, they had a very low game. Kusal Mendes got so many reprieves. But Dasun Shanaka and some good hits from Chamika Karunaratne. And Bangladesh also had a good chance to win this game because they had dismissed Bhanuka Rajapaksa very cheaply.
Also, a couple of comments which I wanted to take. One is Rajat Agnihotri saying, Shanaka is singing Dil Ibadat Kar Raha hai.
Oh, man.
Well done. Comment of the night
Well-
already comment of the night. I'm declaring it.
Ibadat.
I'm calling it.
Yep.
And of course, Rajesh Kumar Patra saying that Shakib's behavior as a captain, very awful. Not calm under pressure. Scolding Ibadat after every ball. Wrong choice of captain. Thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he wasn't scolding Ibadat. He was just telling him bowl the right lengths and right lines.
The difference is, and this actually brings me to one point as to why is it that we consider Dhoni such a great captain, even when things were going his way. And that's not to say he never gave tongue lashings, but he saved his tongue lashings so that when it actually did come, it was impactful.
Yep.
He never really lost it under pressure the way you saw Shakib. And the thing with Shakib is, that's part of his build-up. Again, I've seen the man win 2 IPL titles with my franchise. He was never captain there, but always a volatile character, not someone, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's always someone who wears his heart on his sleeve. So if something is going even slightly wrong for him, you can see it on his face.
I mean, look, Shakib was more angrier, if I may say, not at the bowler, but at the fielders. There was no business that Bangladesh had of conceding 2 consecutive braces in that 19th over.
Correct.
I mean, the fielders were too deep. And Ikri, do you think due factor? There wasn't
due. But what we had pointed out, and this is a consistent factor when it comes to the Dubai International Stadium, at least, it does get much easier to bat under lights. So again, if you're winning the toss over there, you would want to actually be bowling first.
Sarat Chandra Yalamati, is SL changing its fortunes after last T20 World Cup?
Too early to say.
Still a long way to go, Sarat Chandra, because remember, Sri Lanka are in the qualifiers of the T20 World Cup that will be played. So their campaign begins much earlier. After that, which group will they go to remains to be seen. So Sri Lanka, I will just say, okay, there have been some individual brilliances from Dasun Shanakar, Kusal Mendis stepped up, Bhanuka, and
of course there are 2 bowlers. You can also say, you have, what's his name, Wanindu
and Thikshana. But
But
at the end of the day, Sri Lanka have a lot of work to do. Remember, this was the venue where even in the 2021 World T20 in the Sharjah, they managed to get the better of Bangladesh. And remember, Sri Lanka have not had the edge over Bangladesh ever since 2016. They have lost 4 matches out of 6. In fact, heading into this, they had lost 2 out of the last 3 against them.
And as Pradeep points out, Rohit was also visibly obsessed, but the difference here is he really had a point. Exactly. Yesterday, after a point, you could tell he wasn't happy with the bowling. He made that clear in the post-match. And I understand why. I mean, you had 2 bowlers who were conceding 40 and 50.
Yep.
I too would be unhappy. But again, Varun Parvatanani says, great to see Sri Lanka staying alive, especially being the host nation.
Yes.
Shakib, and especially with Shakib trying to save reviews. Indeed, Bangladesh does not have world-class bowlers. You know what? I won't go that far, but I do think their 2 bowlers didn't perform, and they miscalculated badly, not saving Fizz.
Very badly. I mean, it just made no sense to keep to bowl Fizz out, because remember, if Fizz in this particular on this particular pitch, bowling the 19th or the 20th over, he would have ensured that there was a buffer at least for the last over. Because remember, Mahdi Hassan had taken the wicket in the 18th over.
Correct.
But a spinner bowling the 20th over, it's the same thing what happened with Pakistan.
It's asking for trouble.
Yes.
And also good point from Sobhan Sai. He says that I think we've got the reason why India bowlers were flat yesterday. I mean, look, I'm not going to defend Avesh and Arshdeep because their lines were off, but you also have to remember it does get easier to bat under lights.
It does.
Much easier.
It does.
Hong Kong were making it look like a very, very easy night for them for the most part.
Yep.
I mean, full credit to them for the way they batted, but it was evident that, it was definitely an easier time to bat under lights than it is to bowl.
Yep, Sri Lanka walked the talk.
Jai
Jai
Thakkar,
Thakkar is saying.
absolutely.
But again, Sri Lanka have got much tougher assignments coming up, because remember, they will have to once again face Afghanistan. Because B1 versus B2. You now know who's your B1 and B2 folks.
Exactly.
And that will happen on 3rd September. On the other hand, they'll have to face India. And whether of Pakistan or Hong Kong make it tomorrow, it remains to be seen. I think Pakistan have a slight edge. But a miscalculation masterclass from Shakib, blunders galore at the decks.
Absolutely, Dex.
Shakib has had a history of miscalculating on a number of occasions. Look at 2018 Nidahas Trophy. You had to give it to Soumya Sarkar. When Dinesh Karthik was absolutely going haywire. Even your best bowler, Rubel Hussain, was taken to the cleaners.
Correct.
You did not set the right fields. You had the fields spread out. What are you going to do? So at the end of the day, Shakib's captaincy leaves a lot to be desired. Yes, Arun, what are you saying? Only A2 is remaining.
A2 because Hong Kong,
Yeah, Pakistan, Hong Kong. So on 3rd September, you're going to see Afghanistan and Sri Lanka square off yet again on 3rd. And A1, A2, we may see.
Well, we'll get to know the answer to that one tomorrow.
Yep.
Who's to? I mean, we're all expecting it will be Pakistan.
Yeah, but one word on Dasun Shanaka. I mean, simply leading from the front. I mean, as a captain, he's been simply marvelous for Sri Lanka when it comes to white ball cricket. Because remember, Sri Lanka have not endured as I had said prior to this game, out of 14 T20Is that Sri Lanka have played, they have won only 4. Bangladesh, now with this T20I edition, they have lost 15 out of 17.
Question for you,
Okay.
Rajat.
Rajat is okay. Guys, a brief on the new overrate rule.
Or what the
please.
overrate is going on
Okay.
here. It's an interesting question.
So, the new overrate rule, Rajat, clearly states that if you do not complete your quota of overs by the stipulated time that has been given, say for example, you have to complete
Like
your
85
minutes.
that
but
means
it
1
can-
hour and 25 minutes.
concessions can be given if there is an injury timeout or if there is a review and all that. After all those calculations, if you've still been found short of bowling your overs, a fielder will come inside the circle. So you have to field with 5 fielders inside the circle.
Correct.
So that is how this new overrate policy has been there.
And I think it's a good, policy to keep in place because honestly, I don't think fines were deterring anyone. They weren't.
You have to go back to the 90s rule. Reduce the target. Change the target. Change the number of overs. For example, India in the 1999 World Cup, they had bowled so slowly because of the number of extras that they had conceded. 3 overs were deducted in their chase. So that is why I am wondering that maybe you have to change it. Arun Parwat.
Very, very funny.
DK will be the most disappointed today. He will not be able to face Bangladesh and have an impact. Well, he has been a Bangladesh killer in the past.
Ah,
though.
yes, he loves playing
2018
against
Nidahas.
them.
Against Delhi Capitals, he absolutely took Mustafizur to the cleaners. But don't worry, DK will have a chance when India play Bangladesh in the World T20, the T20 World Cup. That's
Love Rami,
happening.
by the way, makes an interesting point, not entirely related to the match, but he does point out that Sri Lanka are one team who are improving and South Africa. Absolutely. South Africa, definitely.
I am telling you, South Africa are one of my picks to win the T20 World Cup this time because every single aspect, be it the bowling, batting, or fielding in both white ball and red ball cricket, they are peaking at the right time. And remember, in the 2021 World T20, they didn't do much wrong. One loss and they were out of the tournament. That
Exactly.
one loss to Australia really killed their chances.
It's just a classic, South African bad luck.
Yes.
Ikpreet Singh has an interesting
Do
question
you think
too.
Sri Lanka beating Australia recently gave them confidence?
Absolutely. In fact, remember, they were beating Sri Lanka at home at a time when they were still reeling from just about coming out of that whole period where there was political unrest, political
Yes.
turmoil, and economic unrest. Remember, they were coming through their worst, economic period
Yep.
or the worst economic downturn that they were facing since independence.
Yes.
It cannot be underestimated just how much fortitude it would have taken from these players to go out there and play the way they did.
And remember, they won one of the T20Is and in a spectacular display, they managed to beat Australia in their own home in a bilateral ODI series after 30 long years. That was the amount of history that they were up against. So you have to remember, Sri Lanka are still undergoing tremendous turmoil. And remember, they in the upcoming World Test Championship cycle, they're all but out. But they have given a lot of competition to the other teams. For example, they defeated the West Indies at home. They were hammered by India, but they drew against Australia and Pakistan. And now they have a series coming up against New Zealand. That's the last cycle for them. And they defeated Bangladesh also. So
Yeah. So also just a couple more questions that we're taking, or we can take some more because people are joining us. I love it.
Yep.
Rajat Agnihotri is asking, what is the last date of submitting the squad for the T20 World Cup? That would be September 16th.
16, September
Because 1
16.
month before the tournament begins is when you are
Yep.
supposed to be submitting
And
your...
today, check out the video on Sports Today. I have
Yeah, Sid's done a
explained.
video on Australia and the kind of squad that they picked. Remember, Australia have become the first team, defending champions, host this year, to pick their squad of 15.
Yep. Shoban Sahai, talk about the Bangladesh against reviews and poor umpire. There were 2 edges for Kushal. I mean,
See, that's why you have reviews. I mean, I'm
less
not
said
gonna-
about the umpiring in the
Less,
Asian conditions.
exactly.
the
Less said
better.
about umpiring, the better. But also, that's why you have reviews.
Yes.
And you didn't take them. We have a super chat from Abhishek Sharma. Hi, Abhishek.
Is it ICC biased towards India? Less competitive. Guru was playing all Asia Cup matches Dubai over. Rest teams are already playing one match in Sharjah. Again,
Okay, first off, Abhishek Sharma, 2 things. One, this is not being organized by the ICC, it's being organized by the ACC. And secondly, less competitive group. I mean, honestly, if you have to look at Asian cricket, then there is no group that would not be less competitive for India.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, they are the strongest team in Asia by a mile. at this
mile,
point.
country mile. And okay, I will agree with this point for the 2021 ICC World T20. They were in the least competitive group
And they still-
could not qualify. So at the end of the day, Abhishek, your point is taken for the World T20 but not for the Asia Cup. Ebadat Hossain from Hero to Zero, Mohammad Sarmad, absolutely. Ebadat, who will forget that spell that he had against New Zealand, which Bangladesh won.
Correct.
At Mount Maunganui. But after that, it has just been a very, very roller coaster ride. And today, he was also down with cramp. He was getting treatment, and he just missed this line and lens clearly. And
Let's take one more comment from Pradeep Shivalsan.
Hong Kong versus Pakistan tomorrow. I predict to be close, but Pakistan winning. I would love to be wrong, though. Sri Lanka, the technical host of the Asia Cup.
Correct, we know that. In fact, oh my God, do you remember the confusion when it was confirmed? Were you there that day?
I don't think I was
we weren't.
there.
So what had happened was, we got the mail from the ACC saying that the Asia Cup will be hosted by Sri Lanka, but in UAE. For 10 minutes, there was chaos over the fact because most people thought hosting in Sri Lanka meant happening in Sri Lanka. But what happened was that they did in India. They were hosting it, but in the UAE. So I remember I had done the breaking news update from here, and I said, I mentioned this very clearly. And Vikrant and Nikhil are both saying, is it not in Sri Lanka? No, it's in UAE. Sri Lanka hosting it, but it's in UAE. And then there was confusion. Everyone, I think our sister channel Sportspack ended up, there was a bit of a problem.
Unfortunately.
There. Yeah.
And what is the thing? Rajat Agniotri with 3 back-to-back matches in the next. Will India field their best 7 all 3 matches considering?
They will. They have to. There's no choice.
Have to, Rajat. I mean,
Super Fours, you'd be wanting to play your best team, and also more importantly, leave aside Super Fours. You need to be playing your core together at some point.
Look, according to the conditions, their Indian team has adjusted really, really well. And I will say this because fitness-wise also,
they're pretty good.
They are pretty decent. Yes, the Pakistan team wilted. Bangladesh also struggling with the heat. But remember, the Indian team is really, really fit. And that is why I will say India should field with their core for all the... Because remember, you're not going to play with the minnows anymore. You're going to play with Afghanistan.
You're playing with the big boys now.
You are playing with Pakistan potentially, and you're playing with Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And remember, one of Rohit's losses in his captaincy tenure ever since 2017, one loss is against Sri Lanka. That was in Colombo, the first game of the Nidahas Trophy. So he cannot take Sri Lanka for light. And remember, Dasun Shanaka is a pretty proactive captain. He will ensure that there is depth. And remember, Chamika Karunaratne is coming at number 7. So there is depth in the Sri Lanka batting. So you'll not want to take any team very lightly from now on. Janaki Raman saying something to cheer for Chris Silverwood after his horror tenure with England.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
He was thrown to the wolves, literally.
Yeah, towards the end of his tenure, absolutely.
4-1. That Ashes loss, 4-0. It was simply not done. Vikram Talreja saying if KL still be out of form, then Kohli should open and bring Pant and DK in 11. That'll be really good lineup. Kohli is way ahead Surya or Pant for the opening. Again, look, if you had listened to...
experimenting now.
If you have listened to Rohit Sharma's post-match presentation quotes on the day India defeated Hong Kong, he clearly mentioned that he has informed the group that every individual will have to bat in any position when the situation demands. Now, at best, if you want, you can promote Kohli to open. That is the best you can do. KL at number 3, I don't know, could be hit and miss. But remember, in that top 6, top 7 that you're getting, you are having 2 anchor players. One is KL, one is Virat. Rohit has clearly said that there is a flexible batting order. Will you promote Pant to open? I don't think so. Because then you're absolutely playing around with the composition and what you want with the side. I mean, why do you want to play DK and Pant in the same side? Actually, it does not make sense. Your batting is going to be determined by your top 5, which is Rohit, KL, Virat, Surya, Hardik. Pant or DK is there primarily to ensure that even if the top 3 or 4 fail, there is a buffer.
Exactly. Also, Davis Cricket asked in the Super 4, does the net run rate count? Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
In fact, it would technically count even here, but I mean, the groups is such that you won't really be falling back on that.
Yep. So simple, the top 2 teams, whoever finishes at the top 2 goes into the final. If they are tied on points, net run rate will come into the equation.
And the last question of the day that we're taking comes courtesy of Arvind Ravishankar, because it's an interesting one. He said, so we haven't really had any upsets so far in this Asia Cup. Will tomorrow potentially be one? Ooh.
Well, Hong Kong...
Well, our producer Saransh agrees.
Yep. Hong Kong, remember, they gave India a run for their money, 152 for 5.
Yeah, it was not bad batting at all.
It wasn't bad batting at all. And they had they had restricted the Indian batting for 15 overs. And it took something extraordinary from Surya to ensure India actually reached 192. Imagine if they were restricted to 155, 160. Hong Kong could very well have chased it down. So yes, but Sharjah, Pakistan, traditionally have had a great run there. Remember,
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean-
their fortress for close to 2 decades.
Exactly. So, but I'm expecting a good match regardless. And of course, you can join us tomorrow as we'll be
Well,
bringing
for
you
the sake
coverage.
of the Asia Cup, Hong Kong better not cause an upset. That is the only thing I'll say. But yep, Hong Kong do cause an upset. Yes, it might be the first major upset.
Absolutely.
And I'm not putting it beyond Pakistan to ensure that they do that.
No,
Remember
no, no,
2007?
I won't.
2007 World Cup? We never expected that Pakistan would lose to Ireland. Remember, Ireland were the associate nations at that time in 2007, but it happened.
Right.
So, Himanshu saying 120 striker in T20 till 10 overs, not a World Cup winning.
See, I disagree, and we note for a fact we're out of form, so I do agree with that. And by the way, a lot of people are telling us good night, which I think might be a bit of a sign. So yes, Ekpreet,
Yes.
thanks, and Pradeep, thank you, and thank you each and every one of us, one of you guys for joining us. Please don't forget, if you enjoyed watching our stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment, tap the bell so you know when we're going live. Yes, love, thank you, thank all of you
Thank
guys,
all of you
and don't
guys.
forget, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as well, and of course, download the SportsTalk app. The boys are hard at work over there. Show them some love.
Hardly working, yes.
He's kidding, by the way. They are working. Anyway, good night. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye, vanakkam.